This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The holidays are over, the decorations are down, and suddenly everything feels a little empty. It's normal to feel the winter blues after the holiday excitement. January, February, and March are by far my least favorite months of the year. It's cold and dark, and I have to get some extra vitamin D on board. I also need to keep my regular scheduled appointments with my therapist. So if you're feeling that post-holiday funk, I definitely suggest you checking out BetterHelp because maybe it's time to talk. You might also be one of those people like me who makes New Year's resolutions and you get super motivated. So maybe you need someone behind you to hold you accountable and come up with a plan to meet your goals. BetterHelp is super convenient, totally online. You have a therapist right at your fingertips whenever you need them. So head over to betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 for 10% off your first month.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
This podcast is an unscripted, unedited conversation about true crime. We take the cases very seriously, but I don't take myself seriously at all, and neither should you. Welcome to Wife of Crime.
So, Russ. Nowadays, the true crime genre has completely blown up. But back in 1965, it didn't even exist yet. That was until Truman Capote, a famous writer, decided he was going to go to a small town in Kansas, investigate a quadruple homicide of an innocent family, and write a book about it. This is the case of the Clutter family murders. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wife of Crime, a true crime podcast where I tell my husband Russ true crime stories and he reacts to them.
What's up, folks? It's your boy Russ, a.k.a. King of the Bronx.
Oh.
A.k.a. The Profiler, a.k.a. Lieutenant Dan.
Oh, God. I didn't expect that.
If you know, you know.
Oh, God. All right. And I'm Jess, a.k.a. I still have a cold. It's been going 2 weeks, guys.
That's true. You got that bad immune system. Me, I don't even get COVID because I heard that shit was whack.
Yeah, you've never gotten COVID. It is crazy. Well, we are back for another week. And, you know, if you're new here, you might not know this. But if you've been here a while, you know that we only do our podcast in one take. So that means we mess up sometimes.
Not me.
AKA I mess up sometimes. You don't mess up because you're just like talking.
Yeah, but I'm right even when I'm wrong.
Yeah, you do think that.
Because
which is pretty interesting.
Whatever you say, mean it. And that's it.
Okay, well, I'm wrong sometimes because I get facts wrong. So it's been a while, but we have to do another Jess messed up.
And it takes a lot for you to admit that. But it probably was a bunch of internet people. Why'd you say that?
Yes, people called me out on this one. So last episode, I was talking about Gettysburg. I called it Gettysburg, Virginia. Obviously, I know it's not in Virginia. It's in Pennsylvania. But we only do it in one shot. I didn't realize it till editing. And that was it.
God, Jess, I can't believe you're not like a geographical whiz.
It doesn't take a geographical whiz to know that Gettysburg is actually in Pennsylvania, but it's fine.
I didn't know where it was. I thought Gettysburg was in Gettysburg, wherever that is.
So that was my Jess messed up. And, it happens sometimes, guys. It is what it is.
And guys, fellas, we have to really take note of these moments because it's rare when a wife admits they're wrong.
I think it's also rare when a husband admits they're wrong, too. I guess it depends on the relationship.
I'm not keeping score here, buddy.
So we covered the Devil on Trial, and we released it on Halloween for our Patreon. And I thought it went really well. It was a pretty long episode. It ended up being like over an hour episode. Our True Crime and Chill episodes tend to be about as long as the documentaries, I would say.
It's funny. I was going to say that, like, sometimes how is our True Crime and Chill episode as long as the episode we watched?
Yeah, it definitely was this time. But it was really
too much.
I mean, that's what they're here for, to hear us talk. So
that's true.
But yeah, it was a really good episode. If you're interested in listening to it, we released it on Halloween. Also, if you haven't watched the documentary, watch it. I thought it was a great documentary. My rating was pretty high for this one. So definitely go check it out on Netflix. It's called The Devil on Trial, and it's about the Arnie Johnson case. And he claimed that he was possessed by the devil when he murdered a guy.
Yeah, big corn. I agree, though. That documentary is worth a watch, and I don't really like all these documentaries. I watch them and talk about them, but sometimes I fall asleep.
Yes.
And I stayed awake during this one.
You did. You were into this one, I think.
Well, anytime someone says there's possession, I know it's going to be funny, because they're going to be weird.
Well, yes, we know you don't believe in any of that stuff.
Well, we know you believe in everything. You were believing it the whole time.
Well, not necessarily.
Well, yeah, up until a certain point, you were like, it's a fact. And I
was skeptical, actually, in this one. But I had covered the case already, so I knew some of the details of the case. Speaking of Patreon, we have to do the patron shout-outs. You have to do your job.
Okay, so every week you guys join Patreon, and we're super appreciative.
Yes.
And you get cool stuff over there. So go check that out. The people that joined this week's Patreon are Guinea, Mindy, Cammie, Justin, Brooke, Truth or Demons Podcast, Amber, Whitney, Courtney, Tiffany, Maloney, Mia, Blair, Alicia, Carly, Jezebel, maybe, Vermilion Van Vickle. That's a name. And my best fucking friend from Iowa, Kenzie.
Yes.
So thanks. Cheers to you guys. Let me open this beer. I got to open a beer at one hand now. And everyone knows how frustrating it is because right now I have to hold the mic with my hand. And if anyone wants to be my manager, I need a manager to negotiate with my boss. She's a really tough one.
I want to know, are you going to complain about being in the bed recording every episode?
Until we get out of the bed.
Okay. So cheers to you guys. Also, Russ, fun fact. Guinea, the first name, it's actually Ginny. So shout out to you, Ginny. Sorry he called you Guinea.
Well, I got a lot of Guinea friends. Like Italian dudes, and they call them guineas. And if you wear a wife beater or, the tank top underneath, it's also called a guinea tee in the Bronx.
It is called a guinea tee. That's true.
Yeah, no one takes offense to being called a guinea. That's a guinea.
No.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Because everyone wants to be offended for people that aren't offended nowadays.
Yeah.
So if you got to try to do that, poke yourself in the eye. So, every week I've been doing review of the week strong, actually, for probably some years.
2 years, I think.
Yeah, your boy made this up on the cuff. I saw some funny reviews and I was like, I probably should share that. You guys should do some more funny ones too. So this one is from Rooney Roo.
Rooney Roo.
Yeah, maybe that's what her siblings call her or something.
Rooney Roo. Mm-hmm.
It says mold. What mold? Obviously 5 stars. 'Cause I only read 5 stars. We only get 5 stars. We haven't even ever got 1 star. It's crazy. So this one says, I started listening to this pod in July and I'm nearly through all the episodes. I started from the newest and I've been moving backwards. I never understood why people don't like Russ because I've liked him from the beginning of my time tuning in. I told my mom about the podcast and she says she doesn't like Russ because he talks too much, which I said, no, he's just mold. He will grow on you. Either way, I'm going to steal her phone and give you 5 stars there too. She'll warm up to Russ eventually. So shout out to Rooney Roo and her mom.
Aw, shout out to you guys.
Yeah, Mom, I'm going to keep talking, but your phone's going to give me 5 stars, so you're cool.
Yep. People do warm up to you over time.
And like I always said, if you have people in your house that have iPhones, just steal their phone, give us 5 stars, keep it moving.
Yeah, there you go.
It doesn't hurt to, hit the touchscreen.
It doesn't. So I'm going to do a little shameless plug real quick because I have this amazing book to talk about. It is my cousin Lisa. Her name is Lisa Boyle. She wrote a book. I posted it on our story last week.
That's crazy. I can't even imagine writing a book. Like, it just takes so many words.
I can't believe you just said that.
It's so many words.
That's funny. Well, Lisa, this is actually her 4th book. She wrote a trilogy, but it was historical fiction. But I'm talking about it now on here because this is her first crime thriller novel, and it's called In the Silence of Decay, and I'm about 80 pages in because I had to take a break so that I could research our case this week. But I'm not just saying this because she's my cousin. I'm really not, I swear. It is so good, and because we're a crime podcast, I firmly believe that all of you guys will really enjoy this book.
I'm actually interested to see what some of the crime family would say with a non-biased opinion.
Yeah. And
see what check it out and read it and let us know if it's good.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about reading it, but she doesn't have an audiobook yet, but if we all hit up Lisa Boyle probably on Instagram, I might be able to do the reading.
You want to be her audiobook reader?
Yeah, I mean, I don't read the best out loud, but you can do multiple takes.
Well, that's true. You can do multiple takes. And the main character in the book, his name is James, and he reminds me a lot of you.
Handsome and charming and funny.
He's a little rough around the edges. He's a really great character, and he's developing. Like I said, I'm only 80 pages in, but so far I really like him, and it's because he reminds me of you. Pretty much the premise of the book is this dude, his name's James. He was an military CID detective, and he now is a truck driver. And him and his daughter, who's 14, her name's Molly, they're kind of estranged, but circumstances led them to now living together. And he has to take care of his daughter that he barely knows. So they're driving around in his truck, and Molly finds a little boy who's nonverbal, and he's sitting next to a dead body. And they come across the situation, and they just eventually get involved.
Oh, all right.
And it's just really, really, really good so far. So, well, speaking of books, back in 2014, I was with my grandmother in a small antique store in Maryland while visiting her for the weekend. It's something her and I love to do together. Whenever I go antiquing, I always go straight to old books. I can sit for hours and look through old books. They are by far one of my absolute favorite things. I love the smell of them. I love the feel of the paper. I especially love finding ones with messages in them from the person who gifted the book to somebody.
I think you have some of those. That's cool.
So, like I said, it's 2014. Me and my grandma, a.k.a. my Mimi, we're in the shop that we've been in many times.
A.k.a. the good cook.
I'm sitting on the floor going through the stacks of books, and I pick up a red one. And on the front, I don't see a title. I just see the letters T.C. So I start looking it over, and then I see on the spine that it's In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. I immediately got excited because it was around the time that my true crime podcast obsession really took off. I was listening to Serial Podcast on the bus ride to Maryland the day before, and I was completely enthralled. I remember reading this book in high school, and I remembered loving it. So I started flipping through the first few pages, and on the publisher page, I see the words, First Printing, copyright 1965 by Truman Capote. Wait a minute. This isn't a first edition of In Cold Blood, is it? No, it can't be. I'm here in this random antique store in Pasadena, Maryland. So I checked the price,
$4.90, it says. Okay, maybe it is. I get on Google, true first edition in cold blood. That's what I Google. And I pull up the site FedPo, which is first edition. It's like a first edition site that tells you all the things to look for to make sure it's a true first edition. So it says the first printing on the front, copyright 1965. It had to be Random House because that was the original publisher. The tops of the pages of the book are a dark black color, but the bottom and the side of the pages are, white. And the book was missing the dust jacket, which does take the value down, but I didn't care because this was a first edition of a book that literally changed the book world.
What's the name of the book?
In Cold Blood.
I got to check that out. Is that a good book?
Very good. We have it on Audible because I re-listened to it when preparing for this, so you can listen to it. So I said to myself, okay, I'm getting this. So I go up to the lady, intending to haggle. I knew I couldn't afford $490 for an old book. Russ would literally kill me.
Dead.
So I went up to her and I said, okay, I really want this book. What's the lowest you'll go? And she said, okay. And she looked at me very confused. She goes, I can take $4 for it. And I was even more confused. But then I realized, oh my God, she has no idea. She doesn't know that this is a first edition.
She thought you were haggling from $4.90.
90 cents.
So she was like, this broke ass bitch, I'll give her 90 cents off.
I was like, I'll take it. I was so excited.
Sold.
I started researching first editions of the book and how much it's worth. And I saw prices ranging from $150 to $5,000, depending on the quality, if it was signed by Capote, all the stuff. Since I don't have the dust jacket, it lowers the value. I could probably get between $200 and $700 for it, but I will never sell it.
I'll sell it.
It started me on my first edition search, and I have now collected 8 first editions. I'm obsessed with the hunt for them, and I cherish them so much. I've been wanting to cover this case for a very long time. So I gave the patrons a poll about the upcoming episodes, like we do sometimes on there. And the option that won the poll was a true crime that inspired a book. So today, I'm telling you all about the quadruple murder of the Clutter family, the subsequent sensationalism that followed, and how writing the book about this crime unraveled Truman Capote and led to his undoing. Are you ready?
Yeah.
In Cold Blood is a novel that actually spawned a whole new genre called the nonfiction novel. It took traditional crime reporting and merged it with narrative techniques that are used in fiction. See, this had literally never been done before him. Nowadays, we as true crime podcasters, we do this all the time. I research a case and then I rewrite the case in a narrative form and I tell you the story. But Truman Capote was the first to ever do this.
That's crazy.
This book was published.
So he's the godfather
of true crime novels? Yes.
Wow.
This book was published in 1965, 6 years after the horrific crime occurred. After it was published, it got rave reviews. And as I said, it literally created a whole new literary genre. But of course, it didn't go without a good amount of criticism, as well as a lot of ethical questions surrounding true crime and this new way of telling these stories. The Clutter family were a very wholesome family from Holcomb, Kansas. Picture the movie Pleasantville from the 90s.
When they turn black and white?
Yeah. That's exactly what I think of when I see pictures of the Clutter family. Herbert Clutter was a farmer who owned a large ranch in Holcomb.
Well, overalls?
Probably. He was a very honest and stand-up guy. He had a decent amount of farm hands working for him, and no one had a bad thing to say about this guy. He was a great employer. He paid his farm hands well and took really good care of them.
You know who always dies?
The good people.
Yeah, no one's ever he was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And he messed all these people over and he robbed them and then he died. Nope, it's always this great guy, honest,
I know.
It's always the good people.
And he really was, like, literally everywhere I looked. I read the book, I researched the case online, and I watched a 4-part documentary called Cold Blooded. And every single source said Herbert Clutter and his family were wonderful people.
So listen, folks, what I've learned from all of this is if you want to live, be a piece of shit.
No.
Yeah, then no one kills you.
I mean, whatever. Well, he took really good care of his farm hands, which says a lot. When you're like a good boss who's fair and takes good care of your people, that says a lot about your character. His wife, Bonnie, was sadly a bit of a sickly woman. She suffered severe postpartum depression after the birth of her children and was in and out of hospitals throughout the years for various physical and psychological ailments. But about a week before the murders, Bonnie went to a neurologist who told her that he believed most of the issues that she had been facing for all these years was actually related to a spinal cord injury.
Oof, spinal cord injuries are the worst.
She came home from the doctor excited and full of hope that they may finally know what's wrong with her and what's causing all of this. This was the first time in years that she seemed happy and optimistic. Herb supported his wife and stood by her 100%. He was really excited too. A lot of people in town had no idea how bad it really was for Bonnie, because she was just trying really hard to push through it all.
What was her symptoms?
So she had both physical and psychological symptoms, but a lot of people say like they think her decline in mental health was related to her pain that she was in. Because she was in pain for years. She also did suffer postpartum depression. Her hormones were all out of whack, but they really believed that she had an issue with her spinal cord, because she was having like these spasms in her legs and they were super painful. A lot of times Herb and Bonnie didn't even sleep in the same room because she was up all night with so much pain and she didn't want to keep her husband up because he had to run this farm. So they would sleep in separate bedrooms so that she wouldn't keep him awake, because she would like cry all night in pain.
Holy moly.
It was really bad. Yeah. But needless to say, she tried so hard to work through it. She was a Sunday school teacher. She volunteered at her church. She really tried to just get through her day, and a lot of people had no idea what was going on behind closed doors with them. Bonnie and Herb had 4 children. The 2 oldest girls, Beverly and Eviana, were out of the house by now, and they were in college. But their daughter, Nancy, who was 16, and their son, Kenyon, who was 15, still lived at home and were in high school. Herbert was very active in the community and very friendly. Everyone in town loved him and knew he was a great guy. Herb was the president of the National Association of Wheat Growers because even though his farm was very successful, he always advocated for the smaller family farms.
That's cool.
He was a gem. Nancy was a very popular girl with tons of friends and a boyfriend named Bobby. And Kenyon was a quiet, humble kid, but he could ball. He was a star of the high school basketball team.
Wait, what year was this?
This was 1959.
Oh, they played basketball so weird back then.
Yeah.
They didn't even have jump shots. They did like set shots. They shoot like my mom shoots now. Like,
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get a video one day of my mom shooting a basketball. It's so weird.
You guys already know because we have been talking about them for a while now. Via Hemp is by far one of our favorite sponsors we've ever had, okay? We use their products all the time. Maybe you're a little like me. You're a little anxious. You have a hard time settling down. You're kind of wound up a lot. If that's you, Via Hemp products are for you. Check out their website. You will find something that speaks to you. Maybe you're like Russ. You have a hard time sleeping because you have bad nerve pain or chronic pain. Then Via Hemp is for you because their gummies will help you get some quality sleep. Maybe you're looking to have a really good time. Maybe you just really like edibles. You want to laugh. You want to get the munchies. You want to watch a movie and have a really strong belly laugh. Then Via Hemp products are for you, okay? They're literally for everybody. So head over to viahemp.com, promo code wifeofcrime1 to get 15% off your first order. That's VIIAHEMP.com, wifeofcrime1 for 15% off your first order. Last year, Save More Money was the most popular New Year's resolution in America. Clearly, a lot of us feel like our money is slipping through our fingers. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not the best saver, and I don't know much about investing until I started saving and investing with Acorns. Turns out you don't have to be an expert at all because Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that fits you and your money goals. And I always thought that when people say, ooh, I invest in stocks, that they had a ton of money or something. Well, you don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you invest with the spare money you've got right now. You can literally start with $5. And you know you guys are spending that at Starbucks on these fancy lattes. So skip the coffee and invest with Acorns. You don't even need a ton of time. Like you can just sign up and start investing within 5 minutes. Head over to acorns.com/wifeofcrime or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. That's acorns.com/wifeofcrime.
This whole family was, just like I said, the picturesque image of the nuclear 1950s family. Meanwhile, in March of 1958, a man named Richard Dick Hickok, we can call him Dick because he's a dick.
Dick Hickok.
was in Kansas State Penitentiary serving time on a robbery charge. While he's there, he meets this dude named Floyd Wells, who tells him about this farm he worked on, a farm called River Family Farm over in Holcomb. He tells Dick that the farm is owned by a very wealthy man named Herb, and that Herb kept a safe in his house with $10,000 in it.
Oh, and that's a lot of money back then.
After Floyd tells him about the money, he couldn't get it out of his mind. He wanted it so bad. So he started coming up with a plan of how he was going to get it.
So wait, I just had to look this up because Russ, the researcher, had to come back real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering in 1958, how much is $10,000 worth?
Mm-hmm.
It's $104,000.
Okay,
So that's the equivalent.
So it's a pretty decent amount of money.
Inflation is nuts. Go ahead.
So Dick Hickok's life up until this point was pretty unremarkable. He grew up on a farm in a pretty typical family. He was one of those people who was just kind of a piece of shit for no good reason. One of those bad people who didn't have a horrible childhood, who didn't have a bad life. He just was a piece of shit and there was no reason for it. He was definitely a dick. He was a liar and a thief.
I hate liars and thieves. Those are the two worst people.
And he didn't like working hard. He always found the easy way out. That's why he was in jail for robbery. He just stole from people instead of making money the honest way. Another inmate in jail with them was named Perry Smith. He was also in jail for robbery. The two men were a little different, though. Perry Smith grew up in a terrible environment with an alcoholic father who beat the crap out of his family. He went into the military and served in Korea, but after getting discharged, he had no real transferable skills. He became a drifter and just bounced from place to place and often stole things out of desperation. Perry Smith was more violent than Dick. Dick didn't like to get his hands dirty, so he could tell to pull off the robbery, he needed a guy like Smith as his partner in crime, a guy with nothing to lose.
You know the people that steal that I feel like it's okay, you should just let them go?
Who?
When people steal food.
Yeah. I get that. I mean, if you're stealing just food, not money.
That's the only time that I'm like, man, if someone's just hungry and there's so much food in this country. Like I worked in restaurants, so I know the tons of food that go to waste. And, you know, like that's why sometimes I'll buy a homeless person food. Like they're like, oh, you have $1? I'm like, nah, but I'm going to the pizza shop. You want a pizza? I think I told the story of when I tried to get the guy pizza.
You did, yeah.
But I'll tell it again. So welcome back to Russ's pizza story. So one time I was going to a pizza shop and the guys was like asking for money for pizza.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you're in luck. I'm going to the pizza shop now. What you want? I was like, you want pizza? He was like, yeah, but he was like, can you give me a beef patty with cheese too? And I was like, God damn, he even wants like toppings on it and shit. So I was like, all right, fuck it. Like, who cares? It's an extra buck or whatever. And I went in there. I got the pizza for myself. I got him his beef patty with cheese. And I went outside. And that motherfucker was gone.
Well, did you eat the beef patty?
I did.
Yeah.
But I didn't want it, so But just, it's weird. Like,
It is weird that he made a special request and then left.
Yeah, and sometimes people want your money not for food, but how do you know?
You never know. It's true.
Russ, off topic again.
Dick Hickok was obsessed with the 10 grand in the safe, and he bragged to many people in jail about how he was going to get the money as soon as he got out of jail. In August 1958, Dick got out on parole, and the two men kept in touch and wrote letters to each other about their plan while Perry Smith was still incarcerated. On November 14th, 1959, the two men meet, steal a car, and drive 400 miles to Holcomb, Kansas. But on the way, they stop and buy rope, tape, and rubber gloves.
Ugh.
This proves that they weren't going there simply to rob the place. They were planning to kill whoever got in their way. The men parked their car near a side entrance to the house where they thought the home office was. They break into the home armed with a shotgun, a hunting knife, and the rope, tape, and rubber gloves that they just purchased earlier.
Damn.
It's the middle of the night. All the lights are off in the home because the Clutter family is asleep. The men search through the office right behind the desk where Floyd Wells said the safe would be, but it's not there. Dick is panicking at this point, and he gets pissed. He's been so obsessed with this money for months, he was determined to find it. So they walk right into the master bedroom where Herb Clutter is sleeping, and they wake him up by shining a bright flashlight right into his eyes. Literally worst nightmare.
That's my biggest fear of like waking up and someone being above me because you can't defend yourself. When you hear noise, you could prepare for it.
Yeah.
But that's nuts.
So Herb is frazzled and confused, and the men say, "Where's the safe?" "What safe?" he says. "The safe with the money in it." Herb tells the men, "I don't have cash in here. I don't have a safe with money in it. I don't keep cash here. I pay for everything with checks." He tells the guy, "Please leave my family alone. I'll give you a check. I'll write you a check for any amount you want. You can have anything in this house you want. I'll get all the cash you can find in here, but it's not going to be a lot. Just leave my family alone."
Facts. You could take the whole house, empty it out. Like you and your family's life is worth. It's priceless. There's no price.
So instead of leaving or taking him up on his offer, the men wake up the whole family and force them at gun and knife point into the bathroom. They tie them all up, and after they secure them in there, they go searching through the whole house for the money. But Herb was telling the truth.
It's terrifying.
There was nothing. No safe. No wad of cash. Nothing. Now the men are pissed. They force Herb and Kenyon down to the basement and tie Bonnie and Nancy to their bed frames in the bedroom. The men go back to the basement and they decide they have to kill everyone.
Oh my God, I'm getting so mad.
So they would leave behind no witnesses. Dick hesitates, so Perry Smith pulls out the hunting knife and slits Herb's throat in front of his son. Then, literally for no reason at all, just because these shitheads are sick, Perry shoots Herb at close range in the head with a shotgun. He already slit his throat.
This is tough.
He then shoots Kenyon in the face with the shotgun as well. Imagine how horrifying it is for Bonnie and Nancy, who can probably hear all of this happening upstairs.
I hope there's some type of revenge on these cocksuckers.
Well, they then went to Nancy, shot her in the face, and then last Bonnie. This case is so incredibly sad and horrific and so senseless. Like, he told them there was no money there. They had so many opportunities to leave. They could have, like, Herb didn't know who they were. Yeah, they might have had a description of the men, but it's late at night. He has flashlights in his face. They might not have given a good description. These guys could have probably not been caught if they had just left his family alone.
What's Herb's friend's name again?
Herb's friend?
Yeah, the guy. I mean, not Herb. Dick's friend.
Perry Smith.
So Perry, who told Perry there was a safe there? How did Perry even know?
Dick was the one that Floyd Wells, the guy in jail who said he used to work for Herb, told Dick that there was a safe there. And Dick recruited Perry to come help him.
Oh, so he brought the crazy dude and basically like Teabag from Prison Break. Like he brought a crazy dude with him, and he's a live wire, so you don't know what he's gonna do.
Yeah.
And he's not getting the money, so now he's even more mad.
Yeah, but both of them were mad. They both played a part in this. They both killed this family. They were both equally responsible. But Perry Smith was, like, you're right, like a little more of a live wire. And Dick specifically picked Perry Smith
Because of it.
because he knew I might be able to come up with the idea, but this guy's going to carry out my dirty work.
Well, he probably thought that he'd be crazy enough to scare Herb into giving him the money.
Probably, yeah.
And I hope these dudes get skinned alive.
So the two men collected all the shotgun shells because they thought they were smart. They took Kenyon's transistor radio, a pair of binoculars, and $40 that they found in Herb's wallet. That's it. They brutally murdered this entire family for a transistor radio, $40, and some binoculars.
You can't see it, but I'm just shaking my head.
The two men leave the house, drive about a mile down the highway, pull over, and bury the rope, shotgun shells, and tape. They use water from the radiator to clean the blood off their hands on the side of the road, and then they just keep driving south. The next morning, one of Nancy's friends, Susan, who always goes to church with the family, found it really weird that they never came to pick her up for Sunday morning service. So she called the house, and the phone wasn't working. She had another friend named Nancy as well, and they decided to drive over to the house with Susan's dad to see what was going on over there because they just knew something had to be up. They show up, and the car is still there in the driveway. Susan was very hesitant because she said she had a weird feeling. She knew that something bad had happened. But the two girls, Susan and Nancy, decided to go around to the kitchen door and let themselves in. As they walked through the house, they call out for Nancy, Kenyon, Mr. Clutter. No answer. They noticed that the house was quiet. There were no dishes in the sink, so no one cooked breakfast that morning. And they knew where Nancy's bedroom was, so they decided to head up there. When they opened the door, Susan let out a guttural scream. They found Nancy's body, and blood was everywhere. It was horrific. The two girls immediately ran out of the house to get Susan's dad. He ran in, and he went and saw Nancy's body as well, but he didn't realize that the rest of the family was there dead too. They thought it was just Nancy. So he goes to call police from the phone in the kitchen, but the line had been cut.
These fucking guys thought they were slick.
So the three of them then drove over to the house Herb had on his property that he rented to a young family, and they called the police from there. Finney County sheriffs showed up, and they were completely overwhelmed already because this is a very small town. At the time, Holcomb, Kansas had like literally 300 people living there. It was that small. So they knew that they had never dealt with a crime this horrific before, and they were way over their heads, and they immediately called the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, the KBI, and asked for assistance. They had a quadruple homicide with the killers on the loose.
Wow.
They compiled 17 investigators to start working on the case. They immediately assumed this was a robbery gone wrong, which it was. But they were very confused because the robbers, quote unquote, left behind the jewelry and an envelope with cash in it that was laying on Nancy's dresser. Then they thought maybe this was personal. Herb was well known in the community. They thought maybe he was targeted. As they surveyed the home, they found boot prints in blood in the basement, and it was two different sets of prints, so they realized that there were two killers. They determined the murder weapon was a shotgun, and it was confirmed when a few days later, a citizen called the sheriff's department and said they saw bloodstains on the highway. So police go to this area of the highway where the bloodstains are on the concrete, and they search around that area and found a shallow hole where Perry Smith buried all the evidence. This crime not only terrified the community of Holcomb because it's this well-known family, quadruple homicide, brutally murdered with a shotgun to the face, like that literally blows your head off. It's super brutal. And the killers are still on the loose.
I was thinking that, like, that's terrible. Like, you can't even look at that. Like,
ugh, I know. And this little tiny community, you know, they don't know who killed them, and they feel like maybe they're living next to people who committed this crime.
Maybe it could be your neighbor, and there's, you know, all of them.
Exactly. So it was terrifying to the community of Holcomb, which was previously like the most wholesome place on earth. But it made national news when the New York Times published an article about it a day later. The article was titled, "Wealthy Farmer, 3 of Family Slain." It was a pretty short article that described Herbert Clutter and the murders of him and his wife and 2 children. And that morning, Truman Capote picked up his morning paper and read this small article. It intrigued him. Truman was already a well-known writer living in New York City, mingling with high society. He was famous. He wrote Breakfast at Tiffany's, which became a smash hit starring Audrey Hepburn, one of my absolute faves.
Everybody loved her.
He was writing for The New Yorker at the time. So he called up one of his good friends and fellow writer, Slim Keith, and he said, "The New Yorker's given me a choice of assignments. I can either follow a day lady around New York who never sees the people she works for and write portraits of them just by what I see, or I can go to Kansas, where there's been some murders. What do you think I should do?"
Well, that first one sounds boring as fuck, Truman, so I think you should head to Kansas.
Well, his friend said, "Do the easy one. Go to Kansas." With that, Truman left New York City and arrived in Kansas with his best friend, Harper Lee. Do you know who Harper Lee is?
Yeah.
Who's Harper Lee?
He is Truman Capote's friend.
She
Oh, shit.
wrote To Kill a Mockingbird.
That's right.
Did you ever read To Kill a Mockingbird?
Favorite book.
It's a great book, but they were best friends.
I hate Mockingbird.
And Harper Lee went with Truman Capote to investigate this murder. They arrived there the day of the Clutter family's funeral, November 19th, 1959. Truman stuck out like a sore thumb in Kansas. He was short, well-dressed, flamboyantly gay. Very different from the people in Holcomb, Kansas.
Yeah, back then, people weren't gay out there as much.
Yeah, this was 1950.
Especially in a small town like that. I bet it wasn't like, you know, the gay dude out there probably just wore clean overalls instead of dirty ones.
Well, yeah, he had a very interesting voice. It was high-pitched and childlike, and he was flamboyant in the way he dressed, and you could tell he was gay. He was very open about his homosexuality. He didn't hide it. And a lot of townspeople really liked him. They were open to the idea of him and Harper Lee documenting this crime. They spoke to anyone and everyone who knew the family and were willing to talk. Truman dived deep into this community, determined to learn everything he could about the community, the family, and the crime. Meanwhile, Floyd Wells is still in prison. He's the guy that told Dick about the safe. He hears about the crime, and he decides to talk.
Of course.
He tells the warden that he told the guys about the safe. And he tells the warden that Dick made a plan for him and Perry Smith to go rob the family and kill anyone that got in their way.
He's a stool pigeon.
He is a stool pigeon. He's a snitch. But this was huge for the case because up until then, they didn't have any credible leads. They knew it was 2 killers from the boot prints, but they didn't have really any other leads. And this was huge because now they have the names of the 2 guys who they think could have done it.
Yeah, they could have easily gotten away if this guy didn't say anything.
Yeah. So the KBI get a warrant to search Dick's family farm. And there, they found the knife and the shotgun. But the 2 men were nowhere to be found. Perry Smith and Dick Hickok ended up running to Mexico.
Oh.
They sold the stolen car they had. And when they ran out of money, they returned to the U.S. and committed more robberies and ended up in Las Vegas. On December 30th, Las Vegas police officers pulled over a car matching a stolen vehicle that was reported earlier that night. But to the officer's surprise, the men they pulled over matched the mugshots that were circulating all over the newspapers, all over the country, with wanted signs above them. So both men were arrested and brought back to Kansas and placed in separate cells. Dick Hickok immediately put all the blame on Perry Smith, but both men were charged with 4 counts of murder.
Good. I'm glad that one didn't get off easier.
No. The judge immediately denied the request to be tried separately because that judge didn't want them to blame each other. He wanted them tried together. Yeah,
you guys are just pieces of shit.
Both of them.
They should die from a firing squad, but that's even too easy.
Well, they tried pleading insanity. They underwent a psychological exam and it deemed the men sane. So that didn't hold up. The trial was short. It was pretty open and shut. The prosecution began their opening statements to the jury describing in intense detail the brutality of the murders, as well as highlighting the multiple opportunities that these men had to leave the home after realizing the safe didn't exist and not murder these poor people. The jury deliberated for 40 minutes and then convicted both men of 4 counts of murder.
I believe that's too long that they deliberated. They could have walked in. Everybody think he's guilty? Yep. Let's go back out Friday as fuckers.
The men would sit in prison appealing their case many times, even going to the U.S. Supreme Court. But the men were sentenced to death by hanging. On April 14th, 1965, a few minutes after midnight, the 2 men had the noose placed around their necks. Dick Hickok wanted to offer his last words. He decided to give a douchebag little speech about how he doesn't agree with capital punishment. He said, quote, "I think it is a hell of a thing that a life has to be taken in this manner. I say this because there's a great deal that I could have offered society. Capital punishment is morally wrong." Those were his last words. Asshole.
Well, I think with the capital punishment he was receiving, he was getting off a little easy. He should have been tortured.
I really feel like in this case, I go back and forth with the death penalty all the time. It's a really tough thing for me. I have a really tough time with it. But in this case, just the fact that he even had the audacity to his last words be about how capital punishment is bad after he murdered a family of 4 brutally like that. I mean, he's just a dick. I mean, that's his name. It suits him.
He's worse than that.
He is.
I don't have a big vocabulary, but if I did, I would make a better word.
Perry's last words were, quote, "You're sending me to a better place than this."
Oof.
And he shook the hands of the men that were going to execute him.
They should have spit in his face.
The men were buried on prison grounds, but later exhumed and moved to a cemetery in Leavenworth when the prison was expanding their buildings. Interestingly, Truman Capote bought headstones for the killers' graves.
What you doing, Truman?
Truman caused some controversy with his book In Cold Blood. When he finally published the work in 1965, 6 years after arriving in Holcomb, it kind of tore the community apart. Half the residents were really happy with the work and the way it was portrayed, and others absolutely hated it. Not everyone was ready for the type of novel this became. They also weren't ready for the attention the small town would get from readers all over the world.
How did they promote books back then? The media was, there wasn't as much media, like social media or...
Well, the New York Times bestseller list was still around. I mean, everyone read
back then
newspapers.
In the 50s?
Yeah. So he was on New York Times bestseller list with this.
Well, newspapers are the only thing that was famous back then. And I wonder how you get on the New York Times bestseller. How do they even keep track? Everything was on paper.
I don't know, Russ. It's a different world.
They sent paper airplanes to each other and shit.
You're so stupid. So, yeah, it really tore this community apart. Some people loved his work. Some people really respected Truman and were happy with, the work that he created out of this investigation. And some people were really pissed about it. The Clutter family in particular, the extended members of the Clutter family, were not happy. They said, he got to know us for so long and they didn't like the way it came out.
Well, maybe they didn't like that he profited off their misery.
Well, we're going to get to that. Another point of contention for many people was the fact that Truman became pretty close with Dick and Perry. He visited them many times in jail, wanting to try to get to know the killers on a deep level and understand their psyche. What ended up happening, however, is that he blurred the lines between objective journalism and personal connection. Because, see, when it came to Perry Smith, Truman identified with his childhood. Truman himself came from a terrible home. His parents were incredibly neglectful, and his father was very violent. He was eventually sent to live with his aunts because his parents didn't want him, which was also a very tumultuous home full of fighting and drama. When he was in high school, he was sent off to boarding school where no one would visit him for holidays. He always said that he and Perry had the same start in life, but took different paths. It's almost like he thought of Perry as the man he could have turned into if it wasn't for his love of writing. This relationship rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, many seeing it as if Truman identified with Perry to the point of almost sympathizing with him.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about Truman right now. I might not listen to that audiobook.
It really rubbed people the wrong way. Now, their relationship isn't like in the audiobook. Like, the book itself is fantastic. It's a great book. It's a really good, like I said, it the first time that someone turned a true crime into a narrative form. So
when did he publish this book? Was it in the 60s?
Yes, he published it in 1965. He waited to publish it until the two men were executed. He wouldn't publish it until after they got executed so that the whole thing would be complete. The commercial success of In Cold Blood brought a lot of ethical questions about profiting from real-life tragedy. Capote's financial gain from the suffering of the Clutter family and the convicted killers raised a lot of moral questions about the exploitation of crime for literary purposes, which is a real criticism that true crime creators of podcasts, books, documentaries still face today, understandably.
I understand it.
I do too. It's tough. It is a really interesting line that we walk with true crime.
Yeah, you're the true crime podcaster.
We both are.
I'm the lovable, cuddly co-host that...
Cuddly? I don't know.
I was thinking like I'm a teddy bear.
It's a very, I don't know, it is a tough question, like it's debated today still. And this was the first time that this had ever happened. So it raised a lot of moral and ethical issues for people.
Well, there's a lot of people that love us or hate us. Like I found someone on Reddit saying that we were like morbid and they hated morbid or something like that.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. The impact this book had on Truman Capote's personal life was a tragedy in and of itself. His 6-year investigation and writing of this novel took a large toll on his mental health. He never wrote another novel again.
Oh, shit.
After this one. He continued to write short stories and screenplays, but this was his final book. He started on a downward spiral of substance abuse and severe alcoholism. The book was a massive success, literally creating a new genre, and is still studied today. But the success of the book was incongruent with the impact that it had on Truman. After years of drugs and alcohol, Truman died of liver failure at age 60. He was so young when he died.
Wow, he was drinking a lot.
A lot. He was messy. He got real messy after this. The impact of In Cold Blood on the true crime genre and literature as a whole, it just can't be overstated.
I don't know if you could blame the writers. Or how about this? We'll just blame women because women are listening to it more than men. All the women love this stuff.
Oh, you're saying the people who consume true crime.
Yeah, if people didn't consume it, there wouldn't be any true crime writers or podcasts.
It's true. Yeah, it is true.
So what came first, the chicken or the egg? And which one is the women that listen, a chicken or an egg?
Years and years and years, centuries even, people have been fascinated with crime and the macabre. And there were public hangings that people would attend. It was like entertainment.
They probably sold popcorn there.
So like it's part of being a human a lot of times to be intrigued by dark things like this. We've gone many times into discussions about why the true crime genre exists and why predominantly women, are the ones that consume it. But it can't be overstated that In Cold Blood was impactful in the true crime genre and literature as a whole. It paved the way for a new way of investigative journalism, and it influenced like a ton of journalists to adopt a more novelistic approach to storytelling instead of just like factually reporting things. The profound legacy of In Cold Blood is not only in its kind of exploration of this event, but how it influenced the way that we approach and appreciate true crime stories like this. It's one of those things where this is like a double-edged sword almost. Like on one side, it was a wonderful piece of work. On the other hand, it offended and hurt a lot of people. It also destroyed Truman Capote's life because he was so emotionally involved in this case, and it took 6 years of him writing it and investigating it. And he got really close with Perry Smith, which I think was a very interesting relationship when you really like start diving deep and learning more about the way he saw Perry Smith. I don't
like that.
It really like messed with him a lot. And the whole thing is just kind of fascinating.
Yeah, and that would bother other people, and that kind of reminds me of like nowadays with the sensationalism or how people seem to worship the serial killers.
Yeah.
And people will often ask me, if we talk about the podcast, who's your favorite serial killer? And I'm like, none of them. Fuck those dudes.
Yeah, 100%.
Or like people that wear t-shirts of the serial killers, or
yeah,
I just don't like that. And none of them are my favorite. Like my favorite?
Yeah, it's a weird question. I get it. It is weird. And I think in the beginning, when we first started this podcast and going into this true crime world, I think in our early episodes, we might have said something like that. But now we've learned and we've grown since then. It's been 4 years, and we've done enough cases now and researched enough cases of these tragedies to realize like that's a very insensitive thing to say. And like you said, that love and obsession with serial killers is weird. It's a weird thing.
I don't like it.
So kind of is, this is what happened.
I don't like
Truman.
the serial killers. Like, like when I think about them, I'm like, man, they should be really tortured and not.
Like no merch should be made about them.
But if there's a audience for the merchandise, people will make it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, I love horror films, but
they're not real.
Yeah, and so why are you scared of them?
I'm scared of some of them. So that was our case. I really enjoyed researching this one. Just to I watched a lot of documentaries and stuff about online on like YouTube about Truman Capote and how it impacted his life. But also, you don't want to overshadow the actual crime, the Clutter family, and like what happened to them, because it's just tragedy all around.
Well, their relatives are still out there. They died, in the 50s, like late 50s? So,
yeah. They're still there.
They're out there, and people remember them that are still alive as people, not just a story.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's what we need to remember, and I have a hard time,
differentiating that.
Yeah, good word.
Yeah.
It's almost like bantering about a movie.
Yeah, but it's not. And that's something we all have to keep in mind. Well, if you guys are interested in learning more about the story and about the case itself, there's a 4-part documentary called Cold Blooded. The guy who made the Paradise Lost about the West Memphis 3, he made Cold Blooded about the Clutter family. And he wanted to go down to Kansas and really focus on the Clutter family versus, the book and Truman Capote and the killers. So he really went down there with the intention of focusing a lot on the Clutter family and on how the book impacted the Clutter family. So it's a really good documentary. Like I said, he made Paradise Lost, which that was an amazing documentary too about the West Memphis Three.
Did we
So
watch
he's
that?
really good. You never did, but I did. I watched it when I was preparing for the West Memphis Three episode that we did.
Gotcha. I remember that one.
Yeah.
That was like, they thought they were satanic or something?
Yeah. Satanic Panic.
Look at me. I'm
That's very surprising that you remembered it.
Russ the memorizer.
All right, everybody. Well, that's it.
Well, you know what time it is.
What?
You got to go to wifeofcrime.com and go get that Not Me, Not Today stuff, because that's the dope stuff.
Yeah.
Merch. The hat is fire.
The hat is fire.
I wore the hat today.
Yeah, you did.
And what else?
And you can check us out on Instagram at Wife of Crime Pod. I'm going to be posting, I always post about the episodes, pictures and such. And Facebook at Wife of Crime, the Crime Family. And check us out on Patreon at Wife of Crime Pod. And until next time.
Yeah, folks, I'll be here in a week or two.
Yep, we'll see you later. Bye.